Here we go. 3, 2, 1, Facebook, go. And go. And go. All right, take 2 on Facebook. Instagram homies have been with us this whole time. Not really sure what you heard. We'll figure it out later. Here's a recap of the first 20 chapters of my book, Finding Starlight, starting now with the full prologue, which is just a poem that I wrote to start us all off in the vibe of the book, which is really about mental health as much as it is spirituality and past lives and the crazy shit that I went through. Prologue of Finding Starlight by me, Brittany Boles. A winged beast cannot surprise his victim quite as well as one who slithers on the ground instead of armor, using stealth. He creeps along under the rug, barely makes a sound, stirs nothing in the air at all, waits till no one is around. Unsuspecting happy girl dances in her room, makes believe she falls in love as she twirls and dips her broom. Darkening the lights for sleep, she curls into her bed. Beast slithers nearer now and creeps into her head. Vicious nightmares seem so real and reality so fake. She cannot fight what she can't see. She was not looking for a snake. Scale tips at last to favor beast. Her hope fades with her fight. Forgetting why she fought at all, she caves into the night. Slithers on the ground with beast, feeds on mildewing despair, does not recall her life at all, cannot remember how to care. Beastly fangs with venom drip, lusty, monstrous delight. He claimed his victim's life, and then he took away her flight. Receding back under the rug, he watches from below. Daylight creeping in through his victim's closed window. Drenched in cold, aching and sad, girl begins to wake. Turns her troubled face away from the dawn she cannot take. Sunlight's foreign warmth rejected, she lies in bed and hopes to die. Shallow breath, sapped of strength, she does not even cry. But appearances she's always kept, despite her vivid dreams. So up she gets, in bed she makes, and then she stretches out her wings. A fleeting thought, like shooting star, passes through her mind, of a victory she once had won. But she lets it fall behind. Prologue of Finding Starlight by me, Brittany Boles. And now we'll get into my recap of chapters 1 through 20, titled For Your Convenience. Chapter 1, Katrina, in which we are introduced to the idea of quantum hypnosis, which will be used to take me on a journey through my deep subconscious mind. Katrina is an eccentric, spiritual, intelligent woman who seems to sparkle with curiosity and magic. Her home, where this past life session will take place, is set in the autumn woods in a small New Hampshire town. We retire to her sunroom, which is lined with windows, plants, crystals, and a large, comfortable couch. I explain that I am there because I experience drastic highs and lows in my life, and I worry that I will never be free of a sense of darkness within or around me. I go into moderate detail about my upbringing as a poor, sometimes homeless daughter of an alcoholic, drug-addicted single mother who eventually dies to leave me an orphan at 15 years old. I also mention that I believe deeply in spirituality and mysticism, and that I hope to understand my true nature at the end of this journey, or to realize I'm insane, and deal with that. Chapter 2, The Journey Begins, in which Katrina delightfully realizes that I have thoroughly over-prepared for this journey by writing a multi-page document full of questions about everything from why I exist to what makes a human in the first place. She explains in more detail that this journey will be a deep guided meditation that will take me through early life memories as well as past or future lives. The meditation begins, and I enter an enchanted forest in my subconscious, complete with spongy green moss, a waterfall, and Katrina, now transformed into a fairy. She conjures a magical cloud from the mist of the waterfall and explains that it will take us, Georgia, wherever we want to go. Chapter 3, Blood and Mermaids, in which we arrive inside several early childhood memories, which I relive in the first person. First, toddler me watches my mom get brutalized by an unknown man. Blood ends up in some inconvenient places, and I am forced to throw away my favorite blanket. Then I almost drown in the Pacific Ocean while boogie boarding in California, but a merman-like figure comes to my rescue. I then bid my mother's sanity and the sanctity of our relationship an emotional goodbye. Chapter 4, A Tale of Two Dads, in which we return to the forest for an in-depth discussion about my messed up father figures. I explain that the angry man in the first bloody memory later became my sister's father and my stepdad, heretofore referred to as Dad, and that my own biological father died of injuries from a motorcycle accident before I was born. I also explained that he, my biological father, and my mom were having an affair, probably, and that there was a huge financial settlement that I was part of only after a paternity test and total alienation from that side of the family. Chapter 5, Angels and Vampires, in which the cloud becomes more like a screen than a vehicle and shows us more traumatic early childhood memories. My mother was dating a greasy-looking man who sexually abused me on a fairly regular basis. But in this vision, we see him more like an energy vampire who literally feeds off of a golden light that surrounds me. Later, I divulged the trauma to my aunt, who appears on the cloud like an angel, complete with huge white wings. She then helps me tell my mother, who drunkenly promises never to see the vampire man again. The next scene is me being abused by the vampire man while my mother makes pancakes. Chapter 6, Dad, the Troll, in which we see memories of my kindergarten-aged self living in a ghetto in East San Diego. First, we see that first angry man return to physically abuse my drunk but now pregnant mother. Then, my baby sister, Amber, is born. I am sexually assaulted by some neighborhood kids and blamed for this by my dad. We then learn that both of my dad's parents commit suicide relatively close together in time, and we watch his mother's funeral unfold on the cloud. We are introduced to my cousins, Nikki and Lisa, whom I explain later become more like sisters than cousins. Though we get a restraining order against him, Dad's behavior seems to become more explainable, while I continue to insist that my mother was a terrible person. A custody battle for my younger sister ensues, which is settled with joint custody and our subsequent decision to move from California to Minnesota. Chapter 7, Minnesota with Mom, in which we are introduced to a witch, some new family members, and more abusive assholes. We moved to Minnesota with Mom to be closer to Dad, who was now dating a woman Mom described as a witch bitch, but who I actually liked and admired. Her name is Marion. My mom proceeds to lock my sister and me in a closet in the middle of the winter to go out drinking, and we are rescued by a bit of Marion's magic. Later, we move in with Luke, a violent mechanic my mother is dating and being horrifically abused by. I attempt to intervene and am thwarted. My efforts to keep myself and my sister safe manifest in a golden light, like a shield around us. Chapter 8, Burning Bridges and Reading Poems, in which we explore some of my nightmares, survive a fire, and move out of Mom's care for good. The cloud illustrates a memory of my mom busting out of rehab early on Easter weekend to immediately relapse and burn down our apartment building, while I rescue the children. My aunt, the mother of those cousins that we met earlier, saves Easter and endears herself to me forever. Mom signs over custody of Amber and me to Dad permanently. I take up the art of poetry and accept some notable public speaking engagements. Chapter 9, Blending Like Oil and Fire, in which Dad marries a new stepmother and it goes about as well as you would assume. I think I'm funny. I explained to Katrina that my relationship with my stepmom was severely strained due to her traumatic history clashing with my own courage and independence. We see quite a few sad, angry memories. We see quite a few sad, angsty memories of me cleaning things while crying and listening to angry music. It becomes clear that my adolescence was spent largely isolated in a psychological and emotional war zone, but that I maintained hope and a magnetic charisma that lent itself to success in academic and religious pursuits. Chapter 10, Arizona Sky, in which my biological father's family comes back into the picture and whisks me away to Arizona for the summer. We see and discuss my memories of visiting my aunt and uncle in Arizona and taking a road trip through Utah, which changed my life with its pure majesty. I make new, happy, well-adjusted friends and feel at home for the first time in my entire life. Chapter 11, Legally an Orphan, in which Mom finally dies, and I return to Arizona on a pilgrimage, only to fall in love and withstand a disgusting sexual assault. My return to Minnesota was disappointing, to say the least. Then, Mom died. Politics with Dad were tense. Then I returned to Arizona as was previously planned, but with the caveat that I would return Mom's ashes to the Pacific Ocean, like she always wanted. Chapter 12, Just Kiss Me, in which I fall in love in Arizona deeply with an equally wise and wounded boy. We meet a psychic who offers insight into my mother and my bizarre relationship. The boy respects my then faltering Christian faith and refuses to have sex with me, to my extreme frustration. Chapter 13. The Color of Ashes. In which I traveled to California for my mom's final funeral, where an older cousin takes advantage of my emotional instability to sexually assault me. I grow numb, perform the funeral rites, and say goodbye to my first love in Arizona. Chapter 14. Love and Consent, in which we discuss the memories we just saw, and I am finally able to let go of my shame. Katrina gets angry for the first time when I attempt to explain that I allowed it to happen. We explore the difference between love and consent in a very empowering conversation that ends with a massive healing moment for me. Chapter 15. Bricks in the Wall, in which I explain how I learned to protect myself from my traumas by turning them into shadow bricks, which I then arranged in a literal wall around my heart. We then discussed the end of my high school career, which included being recognized for outstanding journalism, as well as quitting Christianity and getting involved in the world of promiscuity, drugs, and alcohol. I moved out of my dad's house halfway through my senior year, causing him to disown me. Chapter 16. The Blair Witch, in which a con artist steals my entire inheritance. A principal at my school named Blair took an interest in my exploits and asserted herself as a type of mother figure, which I blindly accepted. I then become severely ill with pneumonia, which lands me in the ICU for a week and on bed rest for a month. I move in with Blair, embark on bizarrely suspicious activities, quit college, and eventually discover that she has stolen more than $250,000 from me. I then move out of her house and start my life again, with nothing. Chapter 17. Love Like Drugs, in which I fall in love with a young man whose darkness mirrors my own, and it nearly destroys us both. After leaving Blair's spiderweb, I attempt to remake my life. I fall deeply in love with a man named Dan, who had as many positive role models to emulate as I did. 0. Our love failed in mutual affairs, mine far worse than his, and I digress into a severe drug addiction and suicidal depressive episode. Chapter 18. Carrying On, in which I nearly kill myself, but instead end up in a psychiatric hospital ward, meeting an energy healer, and decide to move to the Caribbean. After cheating on Dan and ruining my life, I become addicted to OxyContin. I make horrible choices that hurt myself and my family, and I almost kill myself. Instead, in a spark of empathy for those I would be leaving behind, I commit myself to a psych ward. There, I meet 2 impactful people who teach me to heal myself and take responsibility for my life moving forward. Meanwhile, my cousin Nikki meets a guy who lives on the Caribbean island of St. Croix, and we all decide to move there. Chapter 19. A Ritual Fire, in which I perform a healing ritual, meet some spirit guides, and reconnect with my inner power. Moving to St. Croix was a rebirth of sorts, which I describe and illustrate to Katrina in great detail. I work on myself, fall in love with the ocean, the rainforest, my friends, and my life. I break apart the shadow wall around my heart, and we are shown a mysterious and powerful, energetic, spiritual ceremony wherein a team of spirit guides join me around a fire. Chapter 20, Learning to Breathe, in which I discover yoga. The island continues to enchant and defrost my spirit, and I am introduced to yoga, which becomes the cornerstone of my newfound freedom and spirituality. We meet an Englishman named Jonathan, who becomes my friend and teacher. And that brings us to chapter 21, Rastapal, which was the last chapter that I attempted to share and ended in a fiery mess of technical difficulties. So, next week we will restart chapter 21, Rastapal, and make it all the way through the end of Finding Starlight by me, Brittany Boles, 1 week at a time until I get signed by a successful literary agent or discovered by Reese Witherspoon or Ellen DeGeneres. Thank you so much for watching this lengthy recap of chapters 1 through 20. If you're interested in reviewing any of these chapters at greater length and depth, they are all available on my website, brittanyboles.com, on my YouTube channel, Magical Yoga, or on my Facebook page under Brittany Boles, and they are all public. I really appreciate you spending time with me. I really appreciate, Lisa, your prompt to restart this series, and all of the other people who have supported me along this journey. Thank you for being a part of my life. Thank you for being inspired, and thank you for carrying your own light out there in the world. We rise together, or not at all. Until next time, namaste. And as Jasper would say, bye-bye.